you can put together a great strategy, but if you don't have the culture, the source at the top, and then a culture that supports it, they're just really fun words to put on paper and values to paint on your walls, but they're not really informing anything.
Welcome to the Leadership Currency Podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping leaders be free from the nonsense that keeps them from being their best self, centered around discussions about leadership development through the lens of ancient truth and timeless wisdom. And now your host, Dr. Doug McKinley.
Hello, my name is Doug McKinley, and welcome to the Leadership Currency Podcast. Have you ever had a great idea but couldn't figure out a way to tell the story, or at least tell it effectively? This podcast is a conversation with a healthcare executive who helps people do that very thing. The discussion is with a colleague and a friend of mine. His name is Tony Burke. Tony is currently the Healthcare Market Strategist, Senior Vice President of Healthcare Systems Partnerships at Teladoc Health. Prior to that, I think ongoing, he serves as the CEO of Pivot Health Advisors, and that's where I've done some work with him. Tony focuses on developing strategic branding while building powerful partnerships. I mean that, powerful partnerships to deliver revenues and profits. He's extremely warm and genuine. He's passionate about his work and has worked in many aspects of healthcare, including performance planning, business development, sales, and marketing. So he's got 30 years experience. We had a great conversation. It was extremely fun. Hope you enjoy it. Well, hey, Tony, thanks for joining us.
No, I'm happy to be here. I've been listening to your podcast, and I'm honored to be one of your guests.
Well,
so thanks for having me.
Thank you. Our relationship has been fun over the years, so I think we feel the same. So the idea is to talk about my original idea was strategy and innovation, but we might switch that word we came up with. So let's just talk about that. I found a couple of quotes after we talked the other day, and I'm going to read them, and that'll get us kind of launched into just the whole idea behind strategy and innovation and how we create better, more effective business systems.
Perfect.
So a couple of quotes from the big dogs. Peter Drucker says, "Objectives can be compared to a compass bearing by which a ship navigates. A compass bearing is firm, but in actual navigation, a ship can veer off its course for many miles. Without a compass bearing, a ship would neither find its port nor be able to estimate the time required to get there." So I think of strategy as that, right? If you lot going on out there, and when you start off heading in one direction, life takes you in different directions. You need a strategy, a purpose.
Absolutely.
So then another one is Jack Welch says strategy is simply resource allocation. When you strip away all the noise, that's when it comes down to. Strategy means making clear choices about how to compete. You cannot be everything to everybody, no matter what the size of your business or how deep its pockets. And that's somebody who had a deep pocket company, right?
I would think so, yes.
A couple of them. Exactly. And then Michael Porter, who's my favorite, said the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. So any of those resonate with you, or how do you think about strategy? And well, first, let's back up. Tell me a little bit about how you found yourself in leadership, and particularly strategy. Like how'd you end up in that seat?
No, it's a great question. I love these quotes because I've seen some of them, and I firmly believe in it. So strategy for me, I didn't start into this thinking like, hey, I want to go into strategy. I think it's just more something that I am, right? I've kind of coming up through my career, really kind of always evolved towards really being more inquisitive, like with the whys. Why are we doing this? Where are we going as a company? And always asking questions to get to clarity. And I think that's what some of this is about, is if you don't know where you're going, any place is the goal.
But we both talked about the fact sometimes we leave the house and don't even know where we're going.
Yeah.
We have a sense of it. So strategy is different than objectives.
Correct.
Like it's an intuition, a curiosity. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, and I've been fortunate to work in environments that have had great strategy, and I've been fortunate to work in ones that don't, because you see the difference. And really, to me, what it is just how do you go from here to there? as effectively and simplistically as possible. And that's where I connected to the resource one, is how do you maximize the time, the effort, and the expense, and the staff resources to be successful. But you have to know where you're going. You have to know the how you're getting there and the why. And so it's kind of like evolving your purpose toward an end state, which is different than innovation. We'll talk about that. But it's taking your current values, your current business model, and introducing it to the marketplace. But you have to understand the market. You have to understand their needs and align your approach to that. And that's always kind of fascinated me, because I've seen both in the corporate structures I've been in, but also the consulting work that I've done, just a wide array of approaches to this, some highly, highly effective. And I was fortunate enough to go through kind of a Baldrige training for the Malcolm Baldrige process.
I don't think we've talked about that. I've not been through their training, but I helped a few hospitals through the Baldrige process.
I know the ones you went through, right. And actually know the leaders there that you worked with, and that was fascinating to me, because it really, the concept of line of sight, where are you going, and does everybody understand their purpose in achieving that line, that purpose at a organizational level? What defines success, and then how do you really drive that and ripple it through your organization so everybody's really clear and understands their value and their intent and their purpose, and how to achieve success towards their departmental success, their individual success, their business success, organizational success, customer success. All is really well defined, and without that, I always say sometimes you get people doing cartwheels down the hallways, and other people wondering why they're so happy. It's like there's incongruence. Yeah.
I was concerned I would find that to be too prescriptive, but I don't know about you, but it was super effective.
Yeah.
And they invited me in on one of the pillars is leadership and governance or something. So I was the consultant that helped them with that.
Yeah.
But of the 6 or 7 pillars, it was very effective. So you're a fan? Of the Baldrige process?
Absolutely, because I think there's a lot of discipline to it, but there's also a lot of disciplined creativity about it, that this is a never-ending process. And so it's not like, I've seen so many organizations that go through a strategic plan process, and they put it together, they put it on the shelf, and they don't really follow it. But Baldrige is kind of a way of life. Yeah. And it becomes part of the culture and the fabric of the way we do things in the organization, not just a practice. But it really changes and simplifies, I think, and aligns a lot of the work that all parts of the organization do. And to me, that's a big part of it. And if you know my consulting work, it's a mix of strategy and culture. Yeah. You can put together a great strategy, but if you don't have the culture, the source at the top, and then a culture that supports it, they're just really fun words to put on paper and values to paint on your walls, but they're not really informing anything.
Maybe that's where we'll take this. Instead of innovation, we might go to culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So back up a little bit. What brought, tell us a little bit about the path you got to mostly healthcare, I think, or all healthcare?
Yeah, I've been mostly healthcare, but I started out actually as a consultant way back in a public relations
firm. Let me guess your degree's like in culinary arts or something.
Yeah, I'm in culinary arts.
Are you one of those?
If you tasted my cooking, you would actually not guess. No, I started out in marketing communication. Okay, actually, I wanted to be a writer. I've actually written poetry and doing all kinds of writing. I love to write. It's one of my passions that I don't do enough of. But I wanted to extend that that skill into something. So I went into public relations and marketing, and wound up kind of just, in this pinball machine of life, getting a job at the largest kind of PR consulting firm in the world as right out of college. And it was like a PhD in just all business, because when you're immersed at that level to create image and brand and you really get to see all parts of organizations and people, and there's some fascinating stories there. But I kind of evolved from there, and I worked for a consumer products company. I worked for a Fortune 50 consumer products company. Okay. Then I worked for a boutique financial services company.
Was that through the marketing lens, or were you already moving to strategy?
It was public affairs. And
PR. Okay.
And so it was an extension of the PR work, but really what it got me doing is I worked right alongside the CEO, the CFO, the head of investor relations, and I got to see the business. And it was a brand conglomerate. I won't mention names, but I got to see the significance of that strategy being put into place, that they would only acquire and lead the top 1 or 2 brands in any market that they got into. So
Wow.
there's so much discipline about what they did, and due diligence in the analysis that they did, and the way that they brought products to market was just really tight. And I got really attracted to that because of the success that they were having, and just the people that I saw that were wildly intelligent and great thinkers, which I like being around you. That's why I like to hang around great thinkers.
I'm very intrigued because I haven't had my clients have that. I've never worked alongside such big thinkers like that, so
Yeah.
I get access to them through my work. But
Yeah,
it must have been fun.
It's been the most fortunate part of my career. It's actually one of my prerequisites anywhere I go. It's like I want to know that I'm going to be surrounded by awasomeness and the osmosis. Maybe some of it will rub off.
You've already said 2 things that I think our listeners should capture. So just let me take a pause here. The first one is you were grateful that you worked with companies that were bad at strategy.
Yeah.
I hope people heard you, because I thought there was a little nugget of wisdom there.
Yeah, there is wisdom in that, because it's almost kind of leads over into innovation. It's like you learn a lot by failing,
Right.
too, and you learn a lot by seeing the breakdowns and breakthroughs of organizations. And that's what I love about consulting, is going into every kind of diverse situation and having an impact or an influence in the way that they do their business, their success, not only on the business but the people. And that's why I say this kind of marriage of strategy and culture has to be really tight. I love that. I love the lights on both sides kind of going off.
Yeah, we got to go there. I think that's what we'll do. So, but recently I've been listening to Adam Grant, and he's been interviewing people, and he's come up with a new term, or it's in a book somewhere, but the joy of being wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm picking up from you is, man, it was the best lesson I could learn, is how to.
Yeah.
I'm with a company that's bad at strategy. Okay, now we know what not to do.
Well, that underscores the culture, because if you're not
Right.
allowed to be wrong, you don't learn anything.
Right.
And if you're not allowed to expose it and tear it apart and look at it and understand why it's wrong, then you're going to repeat it. And see, that's the part that I love, is I like to dig through the gritty parts and see why. But a lot of cultures will bury that, and
Right.
you're not allowed to talk about it, or we eliminate that person because they did something wrong or a function. And I have the reverse. That's you shine the light on that to find out, and then we improve.
Right. Well, I think we both work in healthcare. I talk to precision, interventionists, cardiologists, physicians, nurses. They're paid to be right.
Absolutely.
So this concept is very foreign to them. Of let's look what wrong looks like.
Absolutely.
Although they do post-morbidity, tribe conversations where they talk about what went wrong. There is an appetite for it.
Absolutely. I think there is, and in the work that you do, I think it helps that, because
Sure.
it really helps understand the science of what they do with the practicality and reality of what they do.
Right.
And being able to do those kind of postmortems is only for improvement. And I think I've not met too many clinicians that don't want to just be good and be
Right.
better, because they take health
But culture and their own leadership development is foreign to them. So
Correct.
when I pair that with that, then their eyes light up. They're like,
Yeah.
teach me how.
Absolutely. And I think we're seeing a whole emergence of a different perspective
Yep.
in that field. And, being in healthcare for 30 years, just seeing the shift of accountability,
Right.
especially because there's a lot of consumer behavior that's calling into questions like, do I blindly follow my clinician's, advice now, or, am I in much more control of my health?
Google is telling me which direction my
Yeah.
clinical care should
Yeah,
go.
and a lot
I
of
don't need a doctor to tell me that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it's going to be interesting. Consumer behavior is going to drive, I think, the future of healthcare. One of the points, anyway.
Absolutely. I think it should be this, I believe, this wonderful tension of consumer demand and clinician demand.
Yeah,
A
be
clinician
beautiful.
demand for excellence and awesomeness and quality, and the consumer demand for accessibility, affordability, and simplicity. And if those things continue to clash, only good things can happen if we listen to it. If we try to force one over the other, it'll give way. But I think that tension actually is creating really interesting new care models and new pricing models and new accessibility models.
Or should, right?
Should.
I hope it does.
Yep.
The other thing that I wanted to make sure the audience heard is this other nugget you dropped was, I want to surround myself with awesomeness.
Yeah.
What a great way to live your life. Like, I know you've recently been doing some new innovative things, but I want to be around awesomeness as much as I can, and hopefully contribute to it and not suck yourself, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think there's a selfishness in that about me, but it's also just an awareness of we all can learn. And if we go into organizations where we feel like we have to be the smartest person in the room, how fulfilling is that really? And like I said, I've been fortunate to work with some great organizations and do now. And, just to make sure you're listening and being attentive and looking for diverse opinions and ways of doing things and people's backgrounds. And I've just been amazed and at how quickly, if you're paying attention, you can learn. And I always say every time I leave a place, I'm like, okay, it's been like a PhD experience for me.
So maybe, Tony, speak to this. Maybe awesomeness is more subjective than we're really leading on to. It sounds like you bring a fresh learner perspective to these environments, and you see awesomeness because you're open to diverse positions. So perspectives. I don't know. What do you think? How do we find awesomeness?
Well, that's a great point, because you have to kind of want awesomeness. You have to kind of be looking and have to be open to it. And you also have to create environments where people want to be that. And I've always been a champion of people. Yep. And, you asked me about kind of getting into leadership. It's not a prescribed thing. I just think I've always seen greatness in people and created clearings and places of opportunity by allowing people to learn and just learn from each other and explore and test and fail and win and succeed together. And, if you call that leadership, that's great. That's, I think, why I've been in the positions I've been in. But the exciting thing for me is one, to absorb all of that, and two, is to witness all of that and to be a part of other people's kind of journey. And you can't have that without people who are vulnerable and open and willing to share. And so there's awesomeness of knowledge, and I've been around a lot of really smart people, both in healthcare but also in business, who have been selfless in their gifts of giving to people and spending the time mentoring and coaching, but also just exuding kind of humanity and humility and openness, which is great. And that's the awesomeness. It's got to be a little bit of you can be really smart and not want to give,
right?
Or you can be give and not really smart. But when we've got people who are willing to do both, it's really magical. And if you're open to it and not closed by ego or arrogance or fabrications of titles and structures and all that kind of stuff, which to me are kind of meaningless, then you can take a lot away from what's all around you.
So culture and strategy, let's go there. Southwest comes to mind.
Yep.
They're super clear, they're not going to be the most expensive airline, and they're not going to give you your own seat.
Yep.
Like they're clear about that.
Absolutely.
They're famous for it. But they're also, culture is everything to them.
Yep.
So help us understand, how do you think about that, and is there any healthcare organizations where you've seen that modeled well?
Oh, absolutely. I think we see it in every facet of our lives, that when you align the what you do with the who you're going to be as a company to the who you're going to be attractive to, you become very relevant. And, Southwest may not be relevant to everybody. A lot of corporate business travelers who want their first class seat and want a glass of wine served, and
I'm kind of one of those now.
Yeah, so they know their audience, and when you talk about the strategic planning, they understand who they're going after, and they've created a culture of accessibility and relational thinking to what's going to resonate, and they've built everything around that, and that's smart. They hire to it, they fire to it, they lead towards it. And every part of their culture and their strategy is towards making this kind of common man, accessible airline that's comfortable and fun, versus, white collar business traveler, which some of the others are going after. But it's in every dimension of our lives, the organizations that really do that well. And a lot of people do one or the other well. A lot of organizations will do strategy really well.
Right, but not both.
Yeah. And we, I always say this, and forgive me, but it's because I say a lot of trite things because, as a consultant, you kind of get paid to say trite things sometimes. But, they say culture eats strategy
for lunch.
And I said, no, they should actually share the meal and split the check because it has to be a balance.
Yeah.
And it's got to be one of the most satisfying events I ever facilitated was a company spinoff, and they wanted me to write their strategic plan with them. And I got in the room and I found out, I may have told you this a long time ago,
I don't remember.
know, but I found out that none of them had ever met before. They were all plucked from different departments. They had never met before, and they were expected to come together and create a strategic plan. And so I talked to the CEO, the newly appointed CEO, and I said, you know what? I could do this. I could write your plan with you, but let's take 3, 5, 6 months and actually bond this group and actually have them start to think in a way that's, more shared.
Did you do the pumpkin thing? I don't know if you want to share that here. What's the pumpkin, I don't know what you call it.
Screaming pumpkin.
Screaming pumpkin. I love that.
I have to give credit to
what's
to
his
Rich
name?
Hill.
Rich Hill. Hi,
Gabriel
Rich.
Consulting. Hey, Rich, if you're listening. It's one of his cornerstones around really understanding who we are at our highest selves. And when you pare it all down, we are made up of, our physical self, our emotional self, our intellect, and kind of our higher self.
Yeah, just for the audience, it's really the phrase "be the best version of yourself" is really popular right now. But he was doing this 2 decades ago.
He's been doing this a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's great.
And when you consider the pumpkin, the intellect being the mouthpiece is the largest piece because we tend to listen to the little voice that's meant to protect us.
Right.
And we have to be able to calm sometimes the intellect to get into our highest self, and it's hard. It's really hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So you did it? Did you take this group through 6 months of bonding, or did they say no?
No, they did it actually,
Wow.
And the group was very surprised at how quickly they got through the strategic planning because they'd never done it before. This was going to be a new for-profit entity from a not-for-profit hospital, and they put these folks together and. They were all kind of like deer in headlights, but they went through the work, they did the hard work, they culturally bonded, they learned about each other, individually, what they stood for, what they were what place were their opinions being framed from, versus just battling over terminology and things, and battling over priority and egos and titles. It really became understanding the source of their contribution and what their commitments were, and it accelerated the we did a full strategic planning process in about 2 months.
Wow.
With about 15 people. And it just started to click because they started to think alike. They started to share commonality. Without that, it would have been a battle. And guess what? That would have been a plan that sat on a shelf that nobody cared about because they were not embedded into it. It was done without regard for who they were or what they cared for as humans. It was just a company plan at that point. And the values, like we've seen, and I know you've seen so many places, we should be innovative and person-centric and, and
words that don't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah, they're just words at that point.
The biggest one I don't like is integrity.
Yeah.
Yes, we should have integrity, but what are we defining integrity as? And integrity has no moral compass, and you can say, I'm going to take your shirt and have high integrity.
Exactly.
I did it. I beat you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of words, but I love the idea of this, that you've been on both sides of the fence. I've worked mostly on the consulting side, built a few small companies, but that you see the value of that, because sometimes it's hard for me to convince people they need to break bread together and get to know one another before we're going to create a great strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's
useful.
It's useful, but it's not always easy. There's a lot of reluctance, and you've seen that. You've experienced
they say no,
and then say, they'll just say, I don't.
I'm not going to waste that.
I'm sure you've heard this. People, that's the soft part of business that I don't want to deal with. I'm like, actually, no, it's the glue. It's the relational connect points, the synapses that hold it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, Patrick Lencioni says, I don't do hand-holding, kumbaya singing stuff, but trust is important.
Yep.
He has really good language for that.
Yeah.
He doesn't call it soft stuff. He calls it hard culture.
Yep.
The stuff that creates effective workplaces.
Absolutely.
Love it.
no, it's great, and then more and more companies need to do it, and I'm a big fan of source leadership, and
how do you define that? I forget.
To me, it's someone in leadership, and typically it's the CEO, has to be standing for this level of commitment. If it's done as an HR practice, it doesn't stick.
Oh, so
it's the source of culture, the source of commitment to having a culturally driven organization that's embedded throughout. It's much like Southwest. They had a source.
Yeah.
And most of these successful organizations, when you look at the culture of Apple, they had a source of creativity and ingenuity and fearlessness about them that you could link back to a person that pushed on everything. It wasn't just an HR mechanism to try to get people to play nice together.
Like Avatar, it's the big tree, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't seen the one underwater yet, but the original Avatar, it's the tree. It's the life source, the thing the heartbeat of the organization.
Absolutely.
And that can't come from the top down only, but it needs to come from the top and the bottom, because without the top, you have just a project or an initiative, a
exactly,
checklist.
Or it falls apart very quickly when leaders don't follow through. If they're not sourcing this and they are being, they expect, do what I say, not as I do, then it just dissipates very quickly. But if others see leadership, consistently emulating and leading from this place of commitment to their culture and what they truly, truly stand for, you hire to it, you fire to it, you lead towards it, and everybody tends to kind of gravitate towards it or gravitate away. They self-select out because it may not be the culture they want, and that's okay too.
Right.
But the source has to stand tall for that level of commitment.
That's good. I don't know if I recall you using that term. I really like that. I know I think I use the term source document.
Yeah.
And I think it's for the same reason, but that's what I use as the charter to help culture transformation.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, we're hearing a lot about, so I really want to talk to you about innovation, but it sounds more like your innovation came through matching culture and strategy and entrepreneurship. Like when I first met you, you were working for an organization where your job was to create business, spin off. I don't know, how many did you spin off of that organization? It was like
3 for them and then 1 for myself.
Yeah, right. So, right. So you were very, I thought it was innovation, but maybe it was entrepreneurship or just meeting a need. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was a little both. I mean, some of it was entrepreneurship, some of it was innovation. And so, I think the one true source of innovation, and the difference being, whereas strategy is you're moving forward your business model and your plans and your values and your product and towards a future. The innovation is really looking to the future and bringing it backwards to you and identifying a need and then identifying a new experience that hasn't been created yet, or you're advancing towards a new level of experience. And I was fortunate. I actually cannibalized my own company.
Right, I remember.
By really understanding that the market had shifted and we were slow to change. And so as part of our strategic plan was to create a parallel company to cannibalize ourselves, to put one out of business by emerging something that was more accessible and more relatable to the industry. And we successfully did that. So
I've talked leaders through that process before, and the ones that embraced it landed really well. And the ones that couldn't embrace it, they were afraid. Well, what about me? I'm like, if you do what's right if you offer value to the enterprise, the culture, then they'll value you. But the ones that are afraid couldn't do it.
Well, the fear is personal. The fear is uncertainty. But when you really peel it back, the fear should be, do I really want to ride this thing down into the grave because it's going backwards and becoming irrelevant, and that's going to be my legacy, and that's going to be what I get to work on every day?
I think a lot of leaders they're being seduced by that.
Yeah,
the stability,
it's
security,
the comfy zone. Yeah,
comfy zone.
We've all been in the
golden
comfy zone.
Handcuffs, whatever you want to call it. And I don't judge them for that. I get it, but I do the same thing. I poke the bear and say, is this really the legacy you want to leave?
Well, and
you rode that one right to the grave.
And quite frankly, and you know this because for the listeners, you were my coach,
right.
And so, I was in that organization for a long time, and so I was starting to realize that I was being defined by this model that was going kind of downhill, and I was breathing life into it. And so I was kind of known as the CPR, in terms of new strategies, trying to do incremental innovation to keep it going and incremental change, and my own personal satisfaction. Career satisfaction, personal satisfaction, the things that I was most committed to were all being threatened. And so it was a necessity for me internally to create new challenge and to repurpose and do innovation. And I will admit it was a selfish motive to reignite energy for myself. So I was using that opportunity to reignite interest and energy for myself, got that going, and then realized that we needed to make a move otherwise. But
you were sending out, your island was burning, and you were sending boats out to try new things.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You need to jump on one eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to help me, I love how you're thinking about this. So help me help our audience understand, where does innovation fit in then? So you're Blockbuster 25 years ago, and you're killing it. Everybody's using you, but you realize the market's moving a different direction, right? I think there's one Blockbuster left. I read an article. There's just one, and I don't know why it's still open. But how do we use innovation appropriately and not call innovation really just change, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there's stages of innovation. There's the kind of, like I said, incremental, where you're advancing systems and process design and structures and things like that to create a new experience. But then, the whole thing of innovation is you have to have a lot of, with strategic planning, it's around market data and analytics and things like that, where we want to go. And with the innovation kind of discussion, it's really having much deeper understanding and intuition about people and where it's going. Because they're not going to demonstrate behaviors that they've never seen before. So they're not going to be like, boy, I wish I had it's the old Henry Ford thing I won't bore you with because everybody's heard it. But so you have to have a lot more intuition about your industry that you understand, and you have to take risks and continue to evolve. And if you're understanding that, I call listening to the squeaks of the boat, and understanding that where the needs of people are, and continually innovating, which is continuing to test and push on their accessibility, the simplicity factors, the access, how do they interface with your product, and all the other ancillary technologies or offerings around it. Where's this all going? And then continue to test and push on creating new levels of experience, rather than always perfecting what you've got today. I mean, making our 8 tracks, in prettier boxes, or it's one thing. But
innovation is borrowing from the future. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah. It's taking tomorrow and bringing it to today.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been reading the same book that I am in the health program you're in, but there's a phrase in there that says, "Lead from the future, act in the now."
Yep. Same.
It's a beautiful way to think about innovation. You're literally thinking about how do I prefer to be in the future, but you have to bring that here.
And I think there's some misconception a lot of time that the innovations for the crazies, and innovations like you got to be kind of out there, and you're creating new wacky. There's a lot of discipline to innovation.
Good innovation, sure.
Good innovation, and there's a lot of testing and proving and failing and learning and failing and learning to truly get to true innovation. And then there's different levels, as we've talked before. There's full breakthrough innovation, and so you have to be appropriate for where the market's going to be, because sometimes you can over-innovate and be too far ahead.
Of course.
And we were having this conversation a little bit before about innovations I've seen. It was a fascinating conversation that I had with a tech company back in 2000, and they were showing me innovations. And I'm like, why aren't these publicly available? And he goes, the market's not ready. And you know what? There'll be 5 iterations of the product we have now to lead them and guide the market to this product. So that they actually will accept and adopt it. So it's this really strategic, thoughtful approach to not, be too far in front of people in the market, as to miss the market.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I've also been told, I've never gone to work for one of my corporate companies, but I ask people occasionally, just out of curiosity, where would I land? They always say R&D.
Yeah.
And because I'm always thinking out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
My ideal job at this point, I think I've told you this, that's why I was attracted to your consulting company, is a, what do you call them, a think tank company.
A think tank, yeah. Absolutely.
Just sit around and I'll think about the future and what could be. I don't want to have to, figure all those steps out.
Yep.
How long do you wait? Do we wait 2 years, 3 years till we go to market with it? That's you talk about discipline.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
There's people that are hardwired for that. And, one of my favorite books I think I've told you about is Free the Idea Monkey.
Say it again?
Free the Idea Monkey.
I don't know that book.
It's written by a friend of mine, Mike Maddock, another shameless plug, here in Chicago.
Good.
And it's this, every great company you can trace back to this tension of an idea monkey, the people who can swing from the trees and whiteboard and
right.
create and ideate, but maybe aren't the best at operationalizing. And then you've got the what they call the ringleaders, or the people who could actually put pen to paper and make it happen. And he uses like, has anybody heard of Roy Disney, right? And he's the guy that built Disney World. And
everybody knows Walt.
Everybody knows Walt. And so you've got the idea monkey who's the luminary, but you've got the ringleader who just makes it all happen. And I've always been fascinated by that whole balance. And I've always wondered kind of what I am. What are you? Are you a ringleader or are you an idea monkey?
Oh, I'm an idea monkey.
Yeah.
I'm a monkey junkie.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's what I would have said.
Operationalizing it is so hard for me. It's just my brain doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
And I'm also disappointed that people don't just early adopt and jump into my ideas, because
it's frustrating.
It doesn't everybody see what I see?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it requires real discipline, and it's a different skill set. The catalyst or the galvanizer, that set where you could take an idea and move it forward. I've really learned to appreciate. Awesomeness happens, I think, when you have the right people, handing off these skill sets. It's beautiful.
Well, and that's why I've done a lot of consulting in startup worlds.
Right.
And
I thought you were an innovator, and you said, "No, Doug, I'm not an innovator. I'm more of an entrepreneur."
An entrepreneur, innovator / just question answer or asker,
right?
Inquisitive, but no. And one of the things that I've learned is, and it's a very standard kind of breakdown in early stage companies or startups, is you get an idea monkey who has a concept, and then they hire people just like them. And what happens?
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
They can't get it off the ground.
I can tell you, as an idea monkey, they have a lot of fun. But
they have a lot of fun.
Done.
They get pool tables and ping pong
right.
tables and pinball machines, and they play. And
yeah, I agree. You need both. It's like culture and strategy. You really need both.
And and that's where the point I want to make is great cultures hire to that dynamic.
Right.
And it's a dance.
And they don't judge each other, because a lot of times idea monkeys and salespeople, people are resentful about them.
Yeah.
Because they do all the fun stuff.
Yep.
Not necessarily, but
yeah. And it's actually, there's an artful way of being a leader, which this book kind of highlights, which is we tend to gravitate more towards the ringleaders because they're outspoken and they're loud and they want their presence. They create these ideas and things like that. So what happens when we go to brainstorming meetings? We invite the idea monkeys. And then the person who doesn't speak up is probably a ringleader. And then we go, well, why did we bring Jimmy to the meeting? Well, let's not bring him to the next one. Well, Jimmy's the one analyzing and evaluating and thinking about how this can really happen. And now you've taken the power away. And so you got to honor and give equal honor to both in order to get the best outcome.
So the title is Free
the Idea Monkey.
But you're saying it can't be too free. There has to be some ties to reality.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We got to free them and then channel them. Like I always say, I'm a kite and my wife is holding the string at the bottom. I'm like, without her, I'm floating around.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time, but not grounded to anything. All right, let's wrap this up. I got 2 or 3 rapid questions for you. What has surprised you most about your career? What has been expected that's fulfilled it, and what's been most disappointing?
Oh wow. But the surprising is, had you thought I'd be, a CEO in a healthcare company back in the day, I would have never thought. It was not in my pathway. I was, like I said, writing, doing PR kind of stuff. So it's been a fascinating pinball-like journey of just kind of taking advantage of opportunities and experiences when they become available and that were aligned with who I am. I think
and what's been, it met your expectations. You thought it would go this way.
It met my expectations is the challenge. Providing really interesting challenges and kind of really unique opportunities and meeting, like I said, I think a lot of really great people along the way. That
you hoped you would. You expected to.
That was one of my goals, yeah.
And been most disappointing in your career?
I think it's sometimes the smallness of which some organizations think and how risk averse that some try to stay in their lane. When you can see opportunity, you can sense opportunity, and we tend to constrict too much and hold people back. And I, as a lover of people, I see a lot of people whose energies and souls have been kind of kept in a box, and I'd love to see that exposed and let go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Those 3 good nuggets there. And I'm going to close with this question. I'm brought you on this because I have assessed that you've had a successful career, depending on how I value success, right? You've added a lot of value. You've got a lot of great relationships. All the other stuff the world or culture says successful. That's what I look at. So, to the degree you believe you've been successful, what's your superpower? Would you say?
My superpower is I truly care for people, and I like to ignite the energy inside of them to do awesome things. And I think I do that really well. And that's. We take away titles. I don't care about titles and roles, but the opportunities that I've had to see just people go skyrocket into greatness is, if I can be planted in that situation, that's what I love. Yeah.
You care about people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see that. It's very evident.
No, and I know you do too.
Yeah.
So
that's why we're sitting here together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate your words of wisdom, some good nuggets for us to follow. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Currency Podcast. Hope to see you again soon.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If this podcast was encouraging, motivating, or provoking in useful ways, would you be willing to share it with someone you know who might need to hear this conversation? A review on your favorite podcast service is also always appreciated, and we'll see you next time.